Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into one of the most mind-bending demonstrations of human ambition ever recorded. We're talking about the incredible mindset of Nirmal Purja, better known as Nimsdai. This is a guy who literally stared at the absolute limits of human endurance, shrugged and just walked right past them. In this explainer, we're really focusing on how setting massive, deeply rooted goals can actually help us shatter our own physical and mental limits. And to understand this, we've got to look at what Nims attempted in the most unforgiving environment on Earth, the Himalayas. Okay, let's dive into this. To really wrap our heads around the scale of what we're talking about, just consider the previous record. Before Nimsdai came along, the fastest anyone had ever climbed all the major peaks in the world was nearly 8 years. Nims just casually declares he's going to do it in 7 months. I mean, think about it like this. It's like taking the current world record for a full marathon, which is around 2 hours, and suddenly announcing you're going to run that exact same marathon in 10 minutes. Naturally, everybody thought he was crazy. People told him it was physically impossible.
And the reason they were so sure it was impossible all comes down to this number right here, 14. There are exactly 14 mountains on Earth that reach above 8,000 meters. And at that extreme altitude, there simply isn't enough oxygen to sustain human life. It's known, very brutally, as the death zone. You are literally not supposed to survive up there, let alone climb 14 of them back to back.
Section 1, Clarity in the Death Zone. So, how do you even approach a goal that ambitious? Well, the physical prep is only half the battle, right? The rest of it is entirely in the mind. The crucial thing here is the supreme, unbreakable self-belief. Nims operates with a level of conviction that is honestly hard for most of us to fathom. He points out that while you can lie to the rest of the world, you can never, ever lie to yourself about who you truly are. When he says, giving up is not in the blood, he means it to his absolute core. That isn't just some catchy motivational slogan for him. It's his operational protocol. Because he knows exactly who he is, he believes he's fundamentally unbreakable. And that mindset stems from a really vital distinction Nims makes: the huge difference between merely being alive and actually living the life. You know, so many of us are just existing, right? We're navigating mundane daily anxieties, competing with neighbors, or just trying to get through the work week. But Nims argues that pure adventure brings life into the living. It's out there in those extreme environments, fighting your own internal war and just trying to be better than you were yesterday, that you actually feel alive.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark clarity you find in those extreme environments. When you step into the death zone, all the trivial problems of daily life just completely vanish. You aren't worried about your salary. You totally forget about your mortgage. You block out all the modern noise because your focus narrows purely to one thing: staying alive. Nims actually describes the mountains as nature in its purest form, totally devoid of human negativity. There's this crazy story where the wind is howling, everyone else is terrified, and he just reframes it. He literally tells his team to chill out and enjoy the fresh air. He takes the ultimate negative situation and just forces it into a positive perspective.
Section 2, The Crucible, the Kanchenjunga Rescue. But here's the thing. Positivity and ambition will eventually be put to the ultimate test. The absolute hardest thing Nimsdai ever did wasn't breaking that world record. It was a harrowing life-or-death rescue mission. Picture this scene. Nims and his team have just summited Kanchenjunga. They are totally exhausted, running on fumes, making their way down. Suddenly, just 50 meters below the summit, they stumble upon an Indian climber. He's totally out of oxygen and has been left behind by his team. Instantly, the goal shifts. Nims and his two climbing partners, Mingma David and Gaiman, abandon their descent plan and immediately flip into rescue mode. From here, we're looking at a situation that builds into an absolute nightmare. After dragging the first climber down about 100 meters, they find a second climber in the exact same situation, flat out dying. At this incredibly critical moment, Nims makes a massive sacrifice. He gives up his own personal oxygen to the dying man. Taking yourself off oxygen up there is practically a death sentence, but Nims trusted his own capabilities. He gets on the radio to Camp 4, and people actually respond. They promise they're coming up with help. So Nims gives 100% of his energy, holding absolutely nothing back, trusting that backup is on the way. But as the sun sets, Nims looks down the mountain. There are no head torches. Nobody is coming. And then, tragically, that first climber they rescued runs out of oxygen again and passes away right there on the mountain.
Now, the stakes are compounding at a terrifying rate. Without any backup, the rescue team itself begins to physically break down. Gurman realizes his toes are freezing solid. He's on the verge of becoming a casualty himself, so Nims tells him to head down. Then it's just Nims and Mingma David. Hours pass. David starts freezing and hallucinating, and eventually he too has to leave to save his own life. Suddenly, Nimsdai is completely alone in the death zone. He is forced into this brutal one-on-one rescue, single-handedly dragging a grown man down a mountain.
So you have to ask yourself, why would anyone push their body to this literal breaking point for a total stranger? Nims unlocked a completely different level of physical and mental endurance by asking himself a really simple question. If you were dying, how would you feel if nobody helped you? He put himself right in that dying man's shoes. He thought about the guy's family. He realized that if he were the one lying there, he'd be desperate for someone, anyone, to just not give up on him. And by channeling that profound sense of empathy, Nims found a reserve of strength that completely transcended normal human limits.
Nims manages to drag the man to within a half hour of Camp 4. He realizes he can't pull him the rest of the way alone, so he secures the climber and literally sprints down to the camp to grab the team members who promise to help. Wildly enough, on the way down, he finds and saves another lost climber who's hallucinating. But when Nims finally reaches Camp 4 and starts screaming for help, nobody wakes up. He realizes the climbers at the camp had deliberately turned off their radios to ignore his pleas. His body was completely broken, but his heart was even more shattered. It showed him the true colors of the people on that mountain. Moved to tears, he pulled out his sat phone and called his wife.
Section 3. A purpose bigger than you.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core focus of our explainer, because that devastating night on Kanchenjunga proves that breaking world records is completely meaningless if you lose your humanity in the process. Setting goals isn't just about personal glory, it's about how your purpose allows you to overcome your limits. Nims relies on this framework for the impossible. First, you have to mean your goal to the bone. If you don't truly mean it, you're going to quit when things get dark. Second, you need unbreakable discipline. Third, as we just saw, you absolutely must put yourself in others' shoes. And fourth, your purpose has to be bigger than personal glory. Because if you're only driven by records and you forget what it means to be human, there is zero value in your achievement.
We're going to leave you with this final, incredibly powerful thought directly from Nimsdai. To achieve the impossible, have a goal that is bigger than you. If your purpose is larger than your own ego, you will find the strength to pull off things the world tells you simply cannot be done. So ask yourself this: what is the driving purpose in your life that is bigger than you? What is that goal that's going to allow you to walk right past your own limits? Keep that question in the back of your mind as you face your own mountains. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer.